All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the entire color wheel and show you how to mix black and white into your colors. So you can use anything. You have your acrylic paints at this point, and I've asked you to purchase the 3 primaries, which are red, yellow, and blue, and then you should have black and white. I have a big palette here that I've used a lot. You can see all the different paint on it. But you can use anything. You can use a paper plate. You can use a piece of, I don't know, a piece of cardboard works. Guys, I'm not going to take questions right now. I'm going to do my demo first, so hold on to your questions or to put them in the chat for me, okay? All right, so I've got all my colors. Now, you might at home maybe have like a color palette that looks like this. You can use that as well. It doesn't really matter what you mix your paint on. It's always a good idea maybe to have some saran wrap and lay that over your paint after you paint if you've got extra and you want to use it again, because it won't dry out if you cover it up. If you leave it out, it will dry out. So it's a good idea if you're going to leave it out to maybe wash your board off or throw your paper plate away or whatever you're using. You want to clean it up. And then I've got my watercolor paper that we're doing our drawing on. And then I've got my 2 paint brushes, which I gave to you in your packets, your art supply packets. You should have a bigger one and a smaller one. Everybody has different brushes. I had to give everybody kind of different brushes, but I tried to give you 2 different sizes. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just lay down my basic primaries. Okay, and we're going to see what they look like on the paper here. So you'll notice as you're painting with your acrylic that it's pretty thick paint. You want to keep it thick. You don't want to mix a bunch of water into your paint. When you start doing that, then you water your paint down and you can really see your brush stroke. Okay? When I'm painting with acrylic, I like to load up the brush. So I kind of fill, what that means is I fill the paintbrush with paint. And then I'll lay it down and I'll kind of drag it. If I want to get like a nice clean line, I'll drag it until I run out of paint. And then I load it up again and I drag it until I run out of paint. So you can experiment. It's a good idea to do 2 coats of paint. So you could do 1 coat and let it dry, or you could try to go and do 2. You don't want to see your brush strokes. You want to make it thick enough that it's nice solid blue there. So that is our primary blue. You're going to want a cup of water. A lot of you have already painted before. So I'm going to wash my brush out. When I'm doing this, I don't want to, like, you know, pound it in there and hit it like this, because you don't want to mess with the bristles. You want to keep the bristles nice and straight. So I'm kind of like sweeping back and forth to clean my brush. And then it's a good idea to have some paper towel next to you. And you want to dry that brush pretty good. You don't want it to take a bunch of that water back into your paint. Also, for several reasons, because it's blue now, right? So if I add that blue water to my yellow, I'm going to get green. So I want a fresh brush. Alright, so then I'm going to just lay some yellow down. And you might notice that this yellow seems a little thinner than the blue. That's just the nature of the paint. At least my acrylic paint's like that. You might have better quality. We purchased the NASCO brand, which is like the bulk acrylic brand that we get. Okay, so you'll notice that these colors are really intense. Alright, I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm using the same water, but I'm cleaning it really good. And then I'm always going back and I'm kind of cleaning it with my paper towel in between. And then my red. Now this is just, I'm just doing this to show you your primaries, what they look like. And I would definitely need a second coat of red because I can see those brush strokes. Alright, so now I need to make my color wheel. Again, you guys do not need to do this part, I'm just showing you how to mix color. So I'm going to put my primaries in 3 different sections here. So I've got my red up here. I'm going to try to do my brush washing quickly. And then my yellow I'm going to put right here. If we had more time in this class, we would probably be doing the color wheel, but because we're in arts preview and I only have you for a quarter, we can't spend weeks on this. You have to learn quickly. All right, so how do I, if you guys want to shout out, how do I make green? Which 2 primaries do I mix to make green?
Yellow and blue. Yellow and blue.
Yellow and blue. Okay, so I'm going to mix that right on my palette. Here's a piece of advice. Here's a piece of advice. If you're mixing something with blue, the blue is always a little bit more intense than the yellow. So I like to start with yellow. I'll grab some and I'll put it in a different spot. And then I'll take a tiny little touch of the blue. And you can see how quickly that little bit of blue makes it green. So I never have as much blue as I do yellow when I'm making green. And you got to think about like how much do I need, right? And you want to try to mix as much as you need. And you just mix it until you feel like you have a green that's kind of in between. You don't want it to be too yellow or too blue, because then you're starting to talk about your tertiary colors. We're just mixing our secondaries right now. And you really want to mix it. You want to make sure you don't have blobs of blue and blobs of yellow in there. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good in-between green. So I'm going to put that in between my yellow and my blue. And then we see the complement, right? What's the complement to green? Red, because it's a cross. All right, how do I mix orange? What 2 colors do I need to mix orange?
Red and yellow.
Red and yellow. Which one do you think's more? I'm not sure who's talking right there, but you sound like a robot. I'm not sure. I wish I knew. I couldn't see whose box lit up, but so which one do you think's more intense, red or yellow?
Red.
Red. So we start with which one? Start with yellow because it's less intense. And then I slowly grab my red. And I can tell already that I grabbed too much. So you kind of have to go back and forth until you hit it right. You know, and only you're going to just kind of have to decide for yourself if you think that's right. You can ask me if I'm here. You can ask me or come to an office hour. Okay, so I've got my orange. I'm going to put that in between my red and my yellow. Okay, how do I mix purple, my 3rd secondary?
Blue and red.
Blue and red. Oh. Exactly. You guys have done this before, I can tell. So which one do you, this is a hard question, which one's more intense, the blue or the red?
Blue. The red. Red.
I think it's the blue, actually. They're really close, but the blue is super intense.
Yeah, I see that.
I think blue just wins. If blue was playing rock, paper, scissors, it would be the rock every time. And with this red and blue, it never really looks purple until you mix a tint into it for some reason. It's just, I think, the nature of the blue that I have. FYI, you don't need this much blue paint on your palette. When I was pouring this paint out, it was kind of old and it was just kind of glopped out. So it's too much blue. Don't waste that paint. You only need about this much. Okay, so I've got my purple. I'm going to put that between my blue and my red. Okay, so that is the color wheel. That's how you mix your colors. So if you needed an orange, you're going to know how to do that. If you needed a green or a purple, you're going to know how to do that. Now you could go further and mix your tertiaries. So if I had red, orange, and red, I could mix those two together and get an in-between one, which would be my tertiary, or in between orange and yellow, or yellow and green, or green and blue, or blue and purple, so on and so forth. So you could go infinitely in that direction if you wanted to. So now you know how to mix your colors. So what's next? We are going to take this assignment. Now you can do two things. This is in Schoology. You can print it out if you have a printer at home and you can paint directly on here. Or if you don't have a printer at home, you can just draw these boxes and label them like this is labeled. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is remind yourself, what is my color scheme for this painting? I've already chosen it. You can go back to one of the discussion boards that we posted it on and remind yourself, or you could change your mind. Just make sure you have a color scheme chosen. Remember, those color schemes are warm, cool, complementary, analogous, or monochromatic. Those are your options. So you're going to choose one. I chose analogous, which means colors next to each other on the color wheel. So we're looking at this color wheel. I chose the colors of red, orange, and yellow, the warm colors. That's my color scheme. So you're going to mix a value scale of those colors. So the first one I'm going to do is red. Okay, so in order to do this, I need solid red. I'm going to put my color palette to the side here so you guys can see my actual paper. I know that's so bright. These webcams are not the best. I wonder, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put it lower and see if that helps. It's going to be sideways, but I think it'll help to see. Okay, so I'm going to take my red and I'm going to put it in the middle box. And when I'm painting this, let me move it a little closer here so we can see. I'll just have to hold it up. When I'm painting this, I load up my brush, so I've put a bunch of paint in that brush, and I'm going to put it in the corner of that box, and I'm going to drag it along the side until it runs out of paint. And then I'm going to do the same for all 4 sides. I'm going to make this as neat as I can. Take some hand-eye coordination, and I like to draw a square around the box first, and then I just fill in the center. Okay, so I have my red. So now I need to mix shades and tints of that red. So to make a shade of red, I need a little bit of black. I want this one to be in the middle and this one to be darker. So I'm going to take a little bit of black and I'm going to mix some maroon. I don't need much to fill in these little boxes, so don't put too much paint on your palette. All right, and then I'm going to paint that in. This is my next shade of red. And you might notice that your shades of red are going to look a little bit purple because there's blue in your black. It's a good idea to mix enough to maybe go back and do a second coat if you have time, because this paint, it's thick, but it's not so thick that sometimes you don't need 2 coats to get rid of your brush stroke. If you put the paint on your brush really thick, you might be able to get away with 1 coat. But you kind of have to wait till it dries to really see. Okay, So now I have red, and then I have a shade of red. And now I want to go even darker. I want to go one more shade darker, but we're not using black, solid black in our painting. We're using a very, very dark shade of a color. So it's going to look almost black, but it's going to have some red in it. Now, professional painters, for the most part, not all of them, they're always mixing colors. They're never using the colors out of the tube. Always mixing their colors. It makes for a more complicated color palette. I recommend using your smaller brush for this. These are tiny little boxes. So the main point here is that your shades should get darker as they go up and then lighter as they go down. So as I'm going to mix these two tints, I need to wash my brush in between because I don't want black in my tint. I only want white in my red. So I'm going to wash that brush really well. And I might even want to change my water frequently too, just to keep everything kind of pure. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of red, and I'm going to take more white here than red, because red is super powerful. I mean, you could go crazy and mix 25 shades and 25 tints if you wanted to. If you were really interested in having a big selection, you could mix more than 5. I'll leave that up to you if you're feeling ambitious and you want to do more. So my lightest tint is going to be really, really, really white. So this one is going to be pink. White and red make pink. You're not going to use all these colors in your painting. This is just to teach you how to mix paint and do values. And give you a selection, right? You might say, well, I like this tint better than this tint. So I'm going to use that darker tint for my highlight because I think it goes better with the other colors. All right, and then here's a trick. For the lightest tint, I take the tint that I already mixed and I add more white to it. In fact, there's barely any red in my last tint because I want it to be almost white. It's amazing how little red you need to make that pink. Okay, so this is going to look pink, but it has barely any red in it. Okay, so there you have it. You have your value scale of red. Then I would do your orange and then your yellow. And then you're going to look at all these colors and you're going to say, you know what, I like this maroon better than this one. So I'm going to use this one for my shadow. And you know what, I like this tint of orange better than this one. I'm going to use it for my medium tone. And then you know what, I really like this darker tint of yellow rather than the lightest one. So I'm going to use that as my highlight. It gives you options. All right. I'm going to stop this demo and